The story starts on the final day of the World Pastry Tournament, where the grand finale is underway. Spectators are left in awe as they watch the protagonist at work, a young man praised as the chosen one by the gods of sweets. The last challenge revolves around crafting intricate candy sculptures, and to everyone present, it already seems certain that he will be declared the greatest pastry chef in the world. As the contestants focus on their creations, the protagonist appears overjoyed, as though he were surrounded by a paradise made entirely of sweets. The moment he looks at his finished piece, he becomes completely confident that victory is his, and that his childhood dream is finally within reach. But everything changes in an instant. As he attempts to carry his sculpture to the judging area, its overwhelming weight causes him to lose his balance. With a single misstep, the entire piece collapses, and the accident delivers a fatal injury. As he lies on the ground, bleeding, he comes to terms with the fact that his life is ending. In his final moments, he regrets not being able to create the ultimate sweet he had always envisioned. Tears fall as he recalls his true dream, to build a world of sweets that could bring happiness to everyone. Now, as his life fades, he cannot help but think that God has been merciless. Just then, a divine voice speaks to him, offering him another chance at life. He is told that he will be reborn under a new name, Pimir Morin. And so, the protagonist, now known as Pace, begins his new life in the lands of Mortal, a territory ruled by his father Casserole. When his father first gained control of this land, it was nothing more than barren soil where even wheat struggled to grow. Together with both newcomers and the original inhabitants, he spent nearly 2 decades cultivating the land. Through relentless effort, their hard work finally paid off, transforming the area into a place with 3 villages of around 40 people, where wheat and barley can now be successfully grown. 9 years have passed since Peace was reborn in that world as the son of Casserole. The lord of these lands grew up with his father, a military hero, his mother, and his 5 older siblings. It could be said that he is happy, but unfortunately these lands do not produce sugar, and they almost never get anything sweet. Pace gets distracted fantasizing about making sweets while training with his father, so he ends up losing his sword. At that moment, Casserole's servant Shih Tzu arrives and informs them that he brings good and bad news. The good news is that the bean fields will have a good harvest this year, and the bad news is that in the county of Retis, they managed to defeat some bandits. The ones who survived fled toward their location, and there are around 50 bandits who will probably arrive within 2 months. Pace worries that they might destroy the fields and reach Mortal, since beans and especially wheat are essential for making sweets. Shih Tzu notices the determination in Pace and says that the boy should be the hidden ace they now have. Casserole thinks about it for a moment and immediately comes up with the consecration ceremony. Shortly after, he decides to speak with his wife Agnes and one of his daughters, Yossi, informing them that he will have Pace undergo the consecration ceremony. Agnes is very worried since Pace is still very young, but Casserole explains that his cleverness and talent with the sword far surpass those of children his age. It is explained that in this world the consecration ceremony marks adulthood, so it is too early for a 9-year-old child, but it is exactly what Pace wants. 3 days later, Pace says goodbye to his friends Lum, who are not surprised to learn that Pace is interested in eating sweets. Casserole uses his teleportation magic to take them to the royal capital Bolvadia, where the ceremony will take place. While walking through the market, Pace gets excited seeing many things he had never seen before in that world, such as sugar and fruits, things that cannot be found in Mortal. Casserole tells him that if he passes the ceremony without problems, he will buy him whatever he wants. Pace becomes very excited, wondering what he could ask for when suddenly he comes across some apples, although he learns that in this world they are called bankas. He immediately begins to fantasize about all the possible ways to make desserts with that fruit, even asking his father to try to grow them in their lands. After walking enough through the capital, Pace finally goes to perform the consecration ceremony. There, they make him drink a bitter liquid and lock him in a dark room where he cannot see or hear anything. Casserole becomes worried after a day and a half passes, but the priest in charge of the ceremony explains that as long as the light he emits inside the room does not go out, he cannot release his son. In any case, he is surprised that he has lasted so long and wonders how much power Pace has inside him. For a normal person, staying there for so many hours would not be easy. But what they do not know is that he is simply fantasizing about what he will do with the bankas he saw in the market. Time flies for him while he dreams of creating his land of sweets. And when he finally wakes up, 2 days have already passed and the ceremony has ended. Pace takes an oath where he finally understands what he can do, and discovers what his magic is. The priest in charge of the ceremony is surprised, commenting that he seems to have obtained a power rarely seen today. Casserole thanks him for everything and offers him a good amount of money before leaving with Pace to the market, where he chooses the best bancas. Meanwhile, the priest who handled Pace's ceremony counts his money, saying that it will not be enough to keep him quiet. Upon returning to Mortal, they immediately begin preparations for the bandits' attack. 3 weeks later, Shitsu informs Casserole that the bandits attacked and burned the village of the Knights of Liptobur. At that rate, they will most likely arrive at Mortal before the 2 months they had estimated. Casserole acts immediately by temporarily closing the other 2 villages, ordering the wells to be sealed and houses and crops to be dismantled. The inhabitants of those villages then gather in the main one to attract the bandits there and avoid conflicts in other places. Pace is aware that their forces are not enough, since aside from his father and his 3 servants, everyone else are peasants. In a battle of endurance, they are at a disadvantage, so they need a plan. Mark and Lumi meet with Pace, treating him with respect and saying that they are his subordinates, since their parents are direct servants of Casserole. Pace asks them to forget those formalities, since they are childhood friends. Even so, at that moment he comes up with an idea, so he asks them to gather stones of a size that can be thrown. Mark and Lumi follow his instructions, so they spend the afternoon simply collecting stones until they hear some noises and become alarmed when they see the bandits arriving at the place. They immediately run back to the village to warn everyone, so they quickly close the gates and prepare for the attack. Casserole takes charge of organizing and motivating the villagers, directing his servants strategically. Shitsu comments that the bandits do not know the terrain well, so they will be at a disadvantage if they act at night. Therefore, they will probably wait until dawn to attack, and if they stay awake all night, they will only get tired. Casserole asks Pace for his opinion, and he responds that they lack information, since they must first know exactly how many men there are and how much food they have. Pace only knows this because it is the same with sweets, since the amount of ingredients, time, and temperature are things that must be clear before starting to cook. Casserole then decides to begin a reconnaissance mission together with Shitsu, wanting to catch the bandits by surprise. After explaining the plan, both of them leave, and Pace is left in charge of the village. He immediately takes action by instructing that they will use fire arrows as a signal of the enemy's attack. Even if Casserole and Shitsu know the terrain, if the bandits follow them in the dark, they could get lost, so the arrows will also serve to guide them. While Pace is directing everything and creating a plan in the village, Casserole enters the forest, and Shitsu uses his magic to locate the bandits from a distance. Upon seeing them, he comments that the situation is not good, as it seems the bandits used to be knights. They have 5 horses and appear to be in very good condition, and there are around 70 bandits. Casserole assumes that they must be a group of professional mercenaries, and Shitsu also informs him that he can see villagers captured from somewhere, likely being kept as slaves. Seeing this, both of them hurry and decide to ambush the bandits by surprise. After breaking their formation, the leader of the bandits recognizes their attack patterns and begins directing the others precisely. Casserole and Shitsu then act as if they are retreating, making it seem like they have no chance. This motivates the bandits to chase them, heading straight to the village just as they planned. Minutes later, we see Glose, another of Casserole's direct servants, hear horses in the distance, so he quickly fires flaming arrows into the sky, just as Pace instructed. This alerts the other villagers, who prepare for the attack. On the other hand, Casserole and Shitsu follow the arrows. Heading west, Pace directs the children of the village, who throw burning stones at his signal, managing to hit several bandits. He had planned all of this beforehand while speaking with the villagers, explaining that the children are better than anyone at throwing stones, since it is what they do every day while playing. In addition, if the children help, they can compensate for their numerical disadvantage. Even so, Pace will not allow the children to be hurt, so he stays alert at all times while guiding them. The leader of the bandits grows tired of their tactics and decides to charge forward to infiltrate the village, inviting the other bandits to follow him. Once inside, they attack, but the children continue hitting them with burning stones. The bandit leader gets annoyed and goes after them, but Pace steps in front to protect them, receiving a cut on his arm. However, he is also taken hostage, so no one can do anything. Seeing one of the bandits on the ground with a severe burn on his face, Pace decides to take advantage of the situation and uses his magic for the first time. Suddenly, all the bandits twist in pain as they receive the exact same burn. Pace explains that he simply replicated the injury of that bandit onto the others. The next day, the bandits are captured, and Casserole makes sure to reward everyone who fought to protect the village. Even Mark and Lumi each receive a sword and a sack of barley as a reward for helping Pace so much, which makes them very happy. Both return home to celebrate, and Pace goes with them, happy that everything has returned to normal, since he will finally be able to focus on making sweets. While he fantasizes about making desserts with Bankas, Mark and Lumi sneak out of the house. They decide to go see the captured bandits, believing it is their duty to watch over the prisoners as future servants of the lord of those lands. Despite their determination, the villagers on guard do not let them get close, warning that it is very dangerous. Tired of being treated like children, Mark hides with Lumi behind some bushes and creates a distraction with some rocks, causing the villagers to leave the area. During those seconds, they take the opportunity to enter the place and see all the bandits tied up. The leader of the bandits notices Mark's sword and tells him that it used to be his, so only he knows how to use it. He explains that he will be executed when handed over to the authorities, so at least he would like to teach him how to use it, since if used correctly it would allow him to use magic. Mark becomes very interested, thinking that he will be able to use magic just like Pace, so he approaches the bandit despite Lumi's warnings. At that moment, the bandit leader kicks him hard, and since the rope tying him was loose, he manages to free himself. Before escaping, he attacks Lumi. As the noise draws the attention of the guards, he takes Mark hostage and escapes on a horse. Everyone is alerted within seconds, so they quickly treat Lumi to stop her bleeding. Pace immediately sets out after the bandit leader, knowing that the traps in the eastern mountains should still be in place. If he avoids a fatal blow, he can use his replication magic to copy any injury he receives, and in the worst case, it would end in a draw. On the way, Pace comes up with another idea, thinking about the fact that his magic allows him to replicate what he sees. Meanwhile, his father is informed of the situation and decides to act, but Shih Tzu stops him. He explains that if this becomes known, it will be a heavy blow to the villagers, and at times like this, his duty is to remain strong and calm them. With that in mind, Casserole changes his plan and decides not to act impulsively. After the bandit leader falls into a trap, Pace quickly catches up and protects Mark with his sword. The bandit sees through his plan, knowing that he will try to replicate an injury to gain an advantage. So he plans to finish him in a single blow. Pace has no chance, and his sword is even broken in half, leaving him unarmed and defenseless. Sometime later, Shih Tzu searches the area for Mark and Pace, but the only thing he finds is Pace's broken sword, which makes him think the worst. He returns to the village wondering how he will deliver the terrible news. However, upon entering Casserole's house, he finds Pace being embraced by his mother, which confuses him greatly. Amid the confusion, Casserole demands that Pace explain what happened, since they thought the worst had occurred. Pace explains that he replicated his father's teleportation magic onto himself and used it. He clarifies that his magic allows him to copy anything as long as it is tangible or he has seen the original, and that includes spells from other people. Casserole feels relieved after hearing the explanation, but still scolds him, declaring that he is forbidden from telling others that he can use other people's spells or using them in front of others. He warns him that magic in combat is very dangerous, and if not used correctly, he could die instantly. After all, even if he managed to copy teleportation, he could have ended up inside a rock or underground. Casserole is simply worried, because if it were known that Pace can replicate any type of magic, people would come after him to use him as a weapon. It is a problem that the leader of the bandits escaped, so they can only pray that he dies before revealing what he knows. Sometime later, Pace decides to visit Lumi, who is recovering. But Mark still feels guilty about what happened. Pace leaves them alone to go prepare desserts. And after a while, Mark gathers the courage to apologize, saying it was his fault. Lumi did not expect this, but she quickly stops him, clarifying that the blame lies with the bandit. Mark continues apologizing anyway, so both of them become emotional and the atmosphere turns tense. At that moment, Pace returns to the room with a freshly baked banka cake, explaining that this is his way of helping Lumi feel better and cheering up Mark. Lumi and Mark immediately feel happy when they taste the dessert, and thanks to Pace's words, they manage to feel better. Even though Mark no longer feels guilty, Glacé appears with a murderous aura, asking how he could hurt his daughter. His seriousness disappears when he says that Mark will have to make up for it by marrying her in the future, since a girl as rebellious as Lumi would not be able to find a husband. Mark immediately becomes flustered at the idea, clearly blushing, but Lumi seems to have no problem with the plan, quickly accepting her role as his future wife. Glacé also enjoys the banca cake, and Pace feels happy seeing them like that, now more determined to fulfill his dream of creating a land of sweets. Sometime later, Casserole informs him that they have no money, so now he, Pace, and Shih Tzu are in a meeting to see how to solve it. The reconstruction after the attack has become a serious problem, and reopening the two villages they temporarily closed has become a heavy burden. All the money they have is not enough, and Casserole cannot stop thinking about how much he regrets letting the bandit leader escape. After all, they lost the 200 gold coins that were offered for his head. They cannot ask for loans, since the nearby fiefdoms suffered greatly from the frost, so they also lack money. Shih Tzu clarifies that under no circumstances can they ask the greedy nobles of the court for loans, because they would charge 1 gold coin of interest every month. Pace then intervenes, asking his father if it would be possible to ask his family or his mother's family for help. Casserole explains that he and Agnes cut ties with their families many years ago, so he cannot go ask them for money when they have not even introduced their grandchildren. When he and Agnes got married, these lands were even more barren than they are now, so everyone strongly opposed their union and they had to run away together. Pace knows that in this world arranged marriages are the norm, so that must have been difficult. When he meets with his friends, they suggest expanding the fields or selling banca cake. Despite their suggestions, Pace tells them that both options require time and money, although he really likes the idea of baking more banca cakes. Mark then suggests that he start teaching magic because he wants to learn it himself, but Lumi rejects the idea, saying that even if he learned how to use it, he would never master it. Even so, she asks Pace to show them his magic, since they might come up with something. After thinking for a moment, Pace agrees, so he asks both of them to draw something on the ground. Once they do, he uses his magic to replicate what they drew onto their hands as if they were tattoos. He clarifies that on skin it lasts 2 or 3 days, but on wood and walls it is permanent. Lumi is clearly impressed and asks if he can do it in reverse, replicating something and turning it into a drawing, since it would be interesting to see faces drawn on the ground. Pace becomes very excited, saying that she gave him a great idea, so he runs off without explaining anything. Shortly after, he meets with his father and tells him that he has found a way to earn money. The other day they were talking about finding a husband for Yossi, since she will soon turn 13 and will be of marriage age. Casserole used his teleportation magic to take her to different places to introduce her, but Pace asks what parents who cannot use magic would do, since traveling is dangerous and also not free. With that in mind, Pace uses his magic on a piece of wood, managing to replicate his mother's image to create a portrait. In this way, parents could present their daughters to more candidates without having to travel all the time. They could promote them as engagement portraits for those looking for husbands for their daughters. Casserole knows that with such detailed portraits they could charge 5 to 10 gold coins, and it is cheaper than hiring a painter. In addition, since it is only magic, there are no material costs, and many parents would pay a fortune to present their daughters through portraits. Quite convinced, Casserole admits that this could work, although Shih Tzu reminds him that they could discover Pace's type of magic. In that case, Pace says it would be better to make them believe that his magic consists of making portraits, which is a good excuse. With that in mind, they head south to the sacred kingdom of Prowlich, to the county of Retis, to request an audience with the Countess. The Countess only thinks that he is probably there to complain that they did not eliminate all the bandits, but she is not worried about what a simple rural noble has to say. Within a few minutes, Casserole and Pace finally present themselves before the Countess of Retes, Brioche of the great Miller Retes. Pace appears determined, remembering well the information his father gave him before arriving. The Countess of Retes is the eldest daughter of the previous count. Her predecessors died in the war, and her son, the only heir to the title, was still very young. Because of that, Brioche assumed the role temporarily until he came of age, which is why she is in charge. However, her son died from an illness before reaching that age. With that in mind, Pace introduces himself to the Countess, noticing that she observes them carefully despite appearing kind. He becomes very excited when she invites them to have tea. Seeing the different types of cookies, Brioche explains that her family is dedicated to the tea trade, and that she certainly knows it very well. On the other hand, despite how excited Pace was, he becomes disappointed after tasting the cookies, which surprises the Countess, since children usually get very excited about sweets. After talking for a while, Pace finally has the opportunity to speak, so he tells the Countess what happened with the bandits, exaggerating the events a little as a negotiation tactic. Brioche becomes upset when she sees that he brought up the topic she wanted to avoid, but she tries to keep her composure. She is sure that he will ask for compensation for what happened, so she pretends to know nothing about it. Pace assures her that they have proof that the bandits came from Red's Vale and that they can open a real investigation using the bandits they captured. Casserole presents one of the proofs, showing a sword that was in the hands of one of the bandits, which has her family's emblem. Brioche feels cornered by this, so she concludes that her attempt to eliminate the bandits failed, and as a result they invaded the lands of mortal. She is clearly not happy, but she offers to pay an appropriate amount for what happened, wanting to give them 100 gold coins. Pace clarifies that the correct thing would be to add an amount to repair the damages they suffered, and the Countess immediately notices that he does not speak like a child. She offers 30 more coins, but Pace keeps pressuring, so in the end she offers 150 gold coins, which they accept. Once the negotiations end, Brioche accepts defeat, but before saying goodbye she mentions Pace's reaction to the tea. He explains that the tea was delicious, but the sweets served with it were too sweet. When served with tea, it is better for baked desserts not to be too sweet in order to highlight the aroma of the tea. Casserole silences Pace with a hit before he continues speaking, but Brioche is very impressed. As an apology, Pace decides to make a portrait of Brioche on a piece of cloth, as a gift. This surprises her greatly, so she thanks him and they end the meeting on good terms. Sometime later, Casserole meets with Duke Cattlesec, leader of the Central Army of the royal capital. He introduces his grandson Squale, informing them that he graduated first in his class at the Officer Academy. Squale introduces himself nervously, so his grandfather scolds him for losing his composure and explains to Casserole that his grandson admires him greatly. After all, his achievements have become very famous among the youth, thanks to the troubadours. Pace decides to introduce himself formally, surprising Cattlesec, who mentions that he is much more mature than his grandson. He is also very surprised to learn that Pace can use magic just like his father. At the Count's request, Pace decides to demonstrate his magic, creating a portrait of a girl to give to Squale. He explains that she is the third daughter of the Marquis of Juberek, Miss Petra. Casserole informs him that her family is in a constant dispute with a neighboring kingdom, and since Miss Petra does not usually leave her lands, the Marquis asked them to introduce her. Squale is captivated by how beautiful she is. Pace then comments that next month Petra will celebrate her coming of age just like him, so he is cordially invited. Cattlesec tries to decline the offer, as it is obvious that they are trying to match them, but Squale's excitement wins over him, and he accepts without even thinking. The Duke cannot do anything about it, but Pace discreetly tells him that the Marquis is probably already tired of the long conflict with the neighboring kingdom. In his opinion, the Marquis wants to end the dispute, and that is why he wants to marry his daughter to Squale. Pace's words manage to change the Duke's way of thinking, so he also gladly accepts the invitation. During the following days, supplies and firewood circulate without problems among the villagers of Mortal. All of this is thanks to Casserole, who firmly believes that he would not be a good lord if his people were living in misery. Pace meets with his father to give him some letters that arrived, and after reading them, he comments that they are only good news, since it seems they will have extra income for a while. It will be 20,000 silver coins, since Miss Petra and Squale got engaged, and as an advance they will each send 30 gold coins separately. That money will be used to take care of Petra, since they have asked Casserole to escort her during her stay in the capital, while she celebrates her coming of age. After all, there are surely many who do not like the union between the Juberek and the Cattlesec families, especially those from the neighboring kingdom they are fighting against. As long as the information about the engagement does not leak, there should be no problem. However, the church claims not to take sides with any faction, but depending on the payment they can sometimes reveal valuable information. As they say, being neutral allows them to gather information from both sides, which is a problem despite their teleportation magic. Even Casserole has difficulty, as it would be complicated to teleport Petra and all her servants. In summary, although he will teleport her to the capital, the most difficult part will be protecting her after arrival. Pace comes up with a great idea, which is to lock Petra in the dark room of the consecration ceremony until the announcement of her engagement to protect her. Casserole thinks it is a good idea, so sometime later he finally meets with the Marquis of Juberek, Donak Chel Mile. Here we meet the daughters of the Marquis Petra and Licorice, and with them they finally depart to the capital. The plan is to first go to the church within the Marquis' lands, using the consecration ceremony as an excuse. From there, they will teleport to the church in the capital, and until the time of the celebration, Petra will remain in the ceremony room where they will protect her. Once they arrive at the first church, they protect Petra and Licorice from some thugs who oppose the union. Both are clearly frightened after that, but they still enter the church. Pace takes care of comforting Licorice, who gets scared when she falls behind. When they reach a dark room, they all hold hands and Casserole uses his magic to teleport them, welcoming them to the capital. In another scene, we see a former noble named Armira asking experienced mercenaries for help to restore his house. He asks them to kidnap the daughter of the Marquis of Juberek, Petra, offering 10 gold coins to whoever brings her to him. This is because, apparently, she will marry the grandson of Duke Cattlesec. After leaving the place, the mercenaries show some suspicion about the offer, since that man wants to recover his noble title, but by getting involved with them he is damaging his own reputation. One of the mercenaries assumes that he must have two objectives. The first is to destroy the reputation of Duke Cattlesec, since it would be humiliating if the fiancé of the grandson of the leader of the Central Army were kidnapped. His second objective must be to rescue the kidnapped girl himself and regain his place among the nobles, with that achievement probably marrying the girl himself. Back in the capital, Shitsu informs that many people from the Marquis' family have arrived, and he does not know how they found out, but even nobles from distant lands have come. If the Marquis' family joins with the Duke's family, they will gain great influence, so many will want to get on good terms with them. Casserole says that it will take a few hours until Petra's consecration ceremony ends, so he asks Pace to take Licorice to the reception hall. Pace becomes worried for not noticing how exhausted she seems, so once again he comforts her and accompanies her to the reception hall. In another scene, we see Behen, a staff officer, who reports that he has come to take Petra by order of Captain General Cattlesec. The Marquis leaves with his daughter, escorted toward the place of the celebration. The first stage of the plan is ready, so now they only need to bring the couple together with Licorice and her maid back to their lands after the party. So far, everything is going well, but even though they dealt with the suspects beforehand, they cannot lower their guard. Meanwhile, Pace accompanies Licorice, but her maid Kayla does not leave her side, saying that her job is to protect Licorice. Her strict attitude makes Pace uncomfortable, and when he tries to calm her down, he only earns her displeasure. Shortly after, a commotion is heard outside, and suddenly the ground beneath them begins to glow. Unable to do anything, Pace and Licorice fall into a hole that suddenly forms. Casserole arrives within seconds to see what happened, and upon seeing the hole, he realizes it was made with magic. Faced with this situation, Casserole orders Shitsu to inform the Marquis and Cattlesec about what happened, and without hesitation, he jumps into the hole. However, he only reaches an apparently abandoned and empty mansion, so he returns to inform the others of what he saw. Sometime later, Pace wakes up in an unknown place together with Licorice, both completely tied up. In front of them is the mercenary from before, watching them and promising to release them soon if they behave. Pace analyzes the situation in silence, wondering why he was also kidnapped. Even if they ask for a ransom, his family has no money, so it is clear to him that Licorice was the real target. Pace knows that he must protect her at all costs, so when she finally wakes up, he explains the situation and calms her down. He then tries to gather information, asking the mercenary guarding them what will happen to them. The man replies that nothing will happen to the girl, but he will probably be killed when everything is over. Pace warns him that if they kill him, they will lose 200 gold coins, which surprises the mercenary. Maintaining his act as a frightened child, he tells him that he is the firstborn of a noble, so they will pay a good amount for him. At that moment, he explains that if the one who brought them there is a noble, they could get even more money, since it is common for nobles to negotiate and resolve things with money. Clearly interested, the mercenary asks how much more they could get. At that point, Pace realizes that the mastermind is a noble. If the mansion they are in belongs to him, judging by the room, he must be of a fairly high rank, but seeing how deteriorated it is possible that he is a fallen noble from more than 10 years ago. According to the list of suspects he investigated to protect Petra, the one who fits all of this is the former Duke Armier. Knowing that he will not get more information, Pace uses his replication magic to record a message on the ribbon of his clothes, and by replicating his father's ability, he teleports it to Casserole. Now we see Kayla very agitated when she sees Casserole and his servants so calm, wanting to know how they can be so relaxed. Casserole tries to calm her down, explaining that it would be different if Licorice were alone, but Pace is with her, and he knows he will come up with something. Kayla does not seem to trust his words, but at that moment the ribbon sent by Pace appears, informing them that they are in the Armire mansion and pointing to the possible culprit. Casserole immediately orders Shih Tzu to go to the Duke's house and gather as many men as possible, while he himself will look for volunteers in front of the church and head to the Armire mansion. Returning to Pace and Licorice, we see that the leader of the mercenaries appears, apparently furious. He tries to attack Licorice, so Pace teleports in front of her to take the blow. When another mercenary asks what is happening, the leader explains that Armire told them they will not be paid anything because they kidnapped Licorice instead of Petra. They got confused because they are twin sisters, so the engagement ceremony must be taking place at the Duke's house without any problems. Pace quickly understands the situation and the mercenaries decide to leave the place, but before that they say they cannot leave any witnesses alive. Before they can harm Licorice, Pace stands up after freeing himself and grabs a sword to protect her. Outside the mansion, a commotion is heard, and Armire becomes alarmed when he sees that he is being ambushed. Casserole quickly arrives where Pace is, cornering the leader of the mercenaries. However, before they can do anything, he uses his magic again, creating a hole in the ground to escape. Even so, they capture Duke Armire, so Casserole sends Shih Tzu to give a report and goes back into the mansion together with Pace to search for the mercenary leader. While walking through the mansion, Pace comments that it seems the mercenary leader does not have much magic left, so even if he created a hole to escape, he would not have enough power to go far. The mansion is surrounded by troops, which leads him to conclude that he did not really escape. Both head to the room where everything happened and discover that the mercenary leader was actually hiding to escape later. He introduces himself as Struttle and decides to face Pace, who challenges him to a one-on-one duel. Seeing Pace as a child, Struttle underestimates him and attacks with confidence. However, Pace blocks his attack, breaking his sword and then knocking him out. He advises him that it is not good to take your eyes off your opponent during a battle, and shortly after explains that he replicated a crack he saw in the mansion onto Strudel's sword, which caused it to break easily. 1 month after all of this, the official engagement ceremony between Squale and Petra takes place in a castle in the capital. Duke Cattlesec approaches Casserole and Pace, thanking them for protecting Licorice, who is now his granddaughter-in-law. Pace takes the opportunity to comment that he believes there is something that does not fit in the kidnapping incident. The bandits were very skilled and so meticulous that they prepared multiple hideouts. With everything so well planned, he does not understand how they could make such a basic and fatal mistake like kidnapping the wrong girl. This makes him wonder if they received incorrect information about Petra. In addition, it is very strange that a fallen noble would have enough influence to prepare different hideouts. One of his theories is that there was a third party acting in their own interest, because that would make everything fit. It must be someone who benefited from the fall of the Armire family and gained their hatred. That person used this incident to eliminate any chance of their recovery. Cattlesec stops him and asks if he is suggesting that the person is him. After a pause, Pace says that it is only a theory. At that moment, the Duke realizes that he underestimated Pace by thinking he was just a child. But that was a big mistake. Casserole discreetly scolds Pace, so he decides to change the topic. He comments that the lands of mortal do not produce abundant crops, and they have been thinking about taking measures, but they do not know how to move forward, so they hope he understands the situation and knows how to help them. Cattlesec feels cornered, confirming that he cannot lower his guard against this child, and not wanting Pace to continue talking about his theories. The Duke promises to help them with what they need in exchange for his silence. He admits that everything was his doing, but he never wanted anyone to be hurt, so he must reflect on his actions. Cattlesec thanks Pace for the warning, but also tells him that he was very bold to accuse him so openly. At that moment, Marquis Juberek appears and thanks Pace for everything he did. He also takes the opportunity to corner him with his words, somehow managing to make Pace become engaged to his daughter, Licorice. Casserole understands that his proposal sounds like a threat, so with no other choice, he responds that it would be an honor for his family. Very pleased, Marquis Juberek gathers the entire family to announce the new engagement, wanting to inform all the kingdoms. Licorice approaches Pace, thanking him for saving her before, since she could not do it earlier. Without planning it, Pace is now the brother-in-law of Petra and Squale, so everyone makes a toast for this sudden union. At the end of the day, Pace still cannot process everything as it all happened so quickly that it does not even feel real. Licorice approaches him once again, this time somewhat unsure, wanting to know if he is truly satisfied with her. Pace smiles and reassures her, saying that he is very happy. This makes her very happy, so she tells him that she prepared some sweets based on the ones he gave them before. Pace becomes very excited when he sees that she made cookies, impressed by how good they look. However, when he tastes them, he realizes they are very salty, something he did not expect. Even so, he shows that he is very pleased and assures Licorice that they are delicious, which makes her very happy. Sometime later, we see Casserole having a serious conversation with his wife, confessing that he will bring another woman into the house. Agnes is shocked, and Casserole clarifies that it was not his intention, but he gave in to the pressure. He tells her that she is a very beautiful young woman from a good family, although they are actually twins. Agnes does not understand anything he is saying, so she immediately misunderstands and scolds him for not telling her before. When she realizes that he is talking about Pace's fiancée, she becomes very surprised, admitting that she thought he was cheating on her. Casserole worries, thinking that his wife is now depressed, but in reality Agnes is delighted, since she now has another daughter. The news of Pace and Licorice's engagement begins to spread quickly, reaching the Countess of Redis. Brioche is very surprised when she finds out, as she cannot believe that those poor peasants are joining a family as powerful as the Juberek. With the engagement with the Cattlesec family, the Juberek family increased their power greatly, so she assumes that is why they joined with a lesser house like Mortal. She has also thought about the possibility that the Mortal fief could become as prosperous as theirs. After all, 20 years ago, when Casserole received his lands, it took years before they could harvest anything. But in the last 3 years, they reduced their wheat fields and started cultivating beans. By using beans as fertilizer, they improved the land and their harvest increased. For some suspicious reason, she believes it was all Pace's idea. Even though he is only 9 years old, he was the one who led the negotiations last time and even cornered her. Therefore, she has no doubt that the Juberek family saw the boy's talent and moved ahead of her. Now we see Pace happy because what he asked from Duke Cattlesec and Squale has finally arrived, since during the engagement party they promised to support him. Lumi opens one of the boxes and is confused to see a tree, so Pace explains that it is a false acacia. This tree grows easily even in poor soil and is apicultural, which means it will help produce honey, a key ingredient for sweets. Mark and Lumi celebrate upon hearing this, but Pace explains that there is still a problem. Since it rains little in Mortal, even if they plant trees, they dry out after reaching a certain size, so they must change their perspective. They will not imitate lands with heavy rain, but instead find a way to cultivate them with little rainfall. He will achieve this by creating a reservoir, a place to store water large enough to last an entire year, even during dry early spring. While Pace thinks of new ideas, Casserole and Shih Tzu review the finances of the year, celebrating because for the first time they have made a profit. Shih Tzu takes advantage of the moment to give him good news, informing him that they have received more than 40 requests from people who want to live in the new village of Emilat. Most of them are refugees from nearby areas, since the bandits destroyed their fields and they lost everything. Casserole responds that if there are 40 people, they must hurry to finish the village. Shih Tzu also has bad news and reveals that Pace started another project and left for Lemied with only the children. This news terrifies Casserole more than anything, so he immediately sets out. When he finds Pace, the boy creates a huge hole in a rock by replicating Struddle's ability. That magic turns out to be more useful than he thought, so he quickly begins working to create a large reservoir. Once finished, he explains that they will plant trees all around it, and since it will rain soon, water will accumulate there. When the trees grow, they will also retain water, creating a synergistic effect. Their celebration is suddenly interrupted when Pace notices that his father is standing in front of him, clearly furious, and shortly after he receives a beating and a strong scolding. On the other hand, Brioche continues to regret the engagement, since if she had a daughter, she would have done the same as the Juberek family. What bothers her the most is that Cattlesec and Juberek will surpass her and move into the southern lands. Her assistant becomes worried seeing her so upset and tries to joke by suggesting that she marry him, but to his surprise, Brioche takes it seriously. Back in Mortal, Pace builds 3 more ponds in less than a month, thinking of ways to obtain water other than wells and creating a reservoir to later connect it with channels. While checking how things are going, Yossi meets with him to give him a letter that arrived and seems to be urgent. After seeing the letter, he learns that it was sent by the Countess of Rettis, who is inviting him to a tea tasting. Pace finds it very suspicious that she is inviting him directly, so he decides to consult it with his father, but he is currently not at home. Even so, his father suddenly returns, since he found out about it while he was in the capital. Pace wonders if she wants revenge for what happened during the compensation negotiations, but his father tells him to think about that later and informs him that he has brought a guest. At that moment, Licorice appears, who seems very happy to see him again. Casserole clarifies that it is not a normal visit, revealing that Licorice will be staying in the village for a while. Now that Licorice will live with them, Pace quickly shows her a special place, taking her to his dream kitchen where he prepares all his desserts. Meanwhile, at the Jubaret Castle, we see that the Marquis sent Petra to study in the capital to gain the Duke's trust, and he sent Licorice with the Mortel family because he cannot allow the Countess of Rettis to act freely behind his back. He is sure that Brioche wants to take advantage of his future son-in-law, since a lady of her status surely noticed Pace's potential, and now that she invited him to a tea tasting, her intentions are very clear. By sending Licorice with the Mortel family, he hopes that she will accompany Pace to the tasting, because if his fiancée is with him, Brioche will not be able to deceive him. In addition, his daughter will be safer in Mortal, since the neighboring kingdom of Lutor Road will probably try something after learning about the engagement with the Duke. Back in Mortal, Licorice enjoys watching Pace prepare sweets in his special kitchen. He explains that he thought about making some gifts to bring to the tea party he was invited to, using very valuable ingredients. Pace carefully prepares everything, and Licorice can see how happy he is while making sweets using sticks, pieces, and candies, shaping them into different forms. Licorice is impressed and says that it even feels like a shame to eat them because they are so beautiful. Pace warns her that the sweets would feel very sad if they are not eaten, so she should not think that way. After making several candies, he also decides to make caramelized bancas, leaving Licorice delighted with the taste. Pace then opens the kitchen door, revealing his friends, his mother and his sister, who have been watching them the whole time. Sometime later, Pace finally goes to the Countess of Rettis's tea tasting together with Licorice. They are accompanied by Licorice's maid and Niccolo, the rookie they recently recruited in the Mortel house. Pace keeps thinking about sweets all the time, so Kayleigh reminds him that he is escorting Licorice and should stop getting distracted. While walking through the Countess's mansion, Pace is surprised to see the portrait he made for her, as it is framed and displayed for everyone to see. It seems very intentional, but he does not have time to think about it, since this is the perfect opportunity to promote Mortal's specialties. He introduces Licorice as his fiancée, and the Countess's assistant welcomes them, presenting them as the guests of honor. Pace takes the opportunity to speak formally, announcing that he has brought a special gift that goes very well with tea. Niccolo serves the candies on a plate, and all the guests are surprised by how beautiful they are, becoming delighted with the taste. Pace lets them know that he would love to send more of those candies through traveling merchants, and since it is a gift, they will have no cost. The only thing he asks is that they do not charge taxes on sugar to those merchants. Taxes on sugar products are very high, and since it will be small quantities, charging them every time they deliver sweets would not be fair to the merchants. The assistant quickly understands his logic, and at that moment Brioche appears, saying that it is an interesting suggestion. She greets him formally and asks Pace to explain the details of his request, since she prefers that anything related to business goes through her first. Pace clarifies that they are just gifts, and without wasting time, Brioche suggests moving to another place, asking Licorice to wait with the others. After all, they will be discussing a negotiation only between the Rettis and Mortal houses. Pace leaves Licorice with her maid and Niccolo, saying that he will return soon. Once alone with Brioche, she decides to get straight to the point, asking Pace what he intends to do. Before answering, he asks her to first try his candies, and when she does, the Countess is impressed, admitting that they are delicious. Pace tells her that the ingredients he used are sugar, honey, and water, and that in the future he would like to produce all those ingredients in Mortal. Brioche is surprised to hear that, and Pace assures her that they will be able to produce them in large quantities within 3 years. She wonders how he could do that in infertile lands, but she knows that he is a child capable of it. Pace comments that since she has access to the port, he would like to have her support, and that is why he mentioned the issue of taxes. Brioche thinks it is crazy, but she feels that Pace has something much bigger planned for the future, and she can see a very different future. With that in mind, she agrees to help him with everything related to sweets, because she wants to be part of that future he envisions. While they negotiate, Licorice begins to feel uncomfortable at the party, thinking that places like this are not for her. She only came because Pace said he would be with her, but now that she is alone, she does not want to be there, especially after hearing what the guests say about her family. Once the negotiations between Pace and the Countess of Retes end, she makes him talk about his fiancée, wanting him to admit that he loves her. Without warning, Brioche hugs him, telling him that if he does not admit it, she will not let go. At that moment, Licorice finds them, leaving Pace frozen. He quickly pushes the Countess away, but Licorice runs off, so Pace follows her. When he catches up to her, Licorice apologizes, explaining that everyone in the hall was talking about him, and many of the ladies as well. That made her imagine unpleasant things. For example, that someone might appear in the future who would fall in love with him, and if that happened, he would forget about her. In tears, Licorice says that if her sister Petra were in her place, she would know how to speak cheerfully with everyone. Pace gently stops her before she continues comparing herself to her sister, and tells her that even if she is shy and finds it hard to talk to others, that is who she is. She does not need to be like Petra because he likes her just the way she is, and he is sure that from now on he will like her even more. Licorice decides to believe in him and his words, but she still looks down, so Pace asks her to wait and uses teleportation to leave for a moment. When he returns, he gives her a caramelized banca, explaining that it is not like the ones from before, since he prepared this one especially for her just now. Licorice is surprised to see that the candy has a heart, and when she tastes it, she is moved to tears. Pace reminds her that he knows this dessert as a caramel apple, but it has many names, and one of them is Love Apple. He placed all his feelings into that apple, so he asks her to trust him, because he wants to make her happy and see her smile. Licorice smiles and enjoys the apple, accepting his feelings with gratitude. Pace feels relieved to see her happy again, thinking that he was about to lose that wonderful smile. His dream is to create a land of sweets and make the whole world happy with them. But if he cannot make the people he loves happy, he will never achieve it. Just before they can have their first kiss, Kayla and Nicolo interrupt them as they have been watching everything for a while. Once they return home, Pace's mother drags him with her so he can tell her everything that happened in detail. 2 hours later, he is completely exhausted as he and his mother wrapped candies while talking. Shih Tzu looks at the candy wrappers with curiosity and is very surprised to see that all of them have a portrait of Brioche hugging Pace. He explains that it is his small revenge against the Countess for trying to interfere with his relationship with Licorice. When the candies finally reach their destination, the Countess of Retes completely loses her temper, breaking and throwing everything around her. She cannot believe that Pace distributed sweets with that wrapper among the nobles, because now everyone is saying that she likes young boys. Because of this, dozens of proposals from very young suitors arrive every day, which could interfere with her business. Back at the mansion of Marquis Juberek, they are informed that Marquis Luterode has started to act. As expected, with the engagement between this house and that of Duke Kettlesek, he realized that their military power will increase, and decided to invade. According to reports, the army of Luterode has at least 30,000 soldiers, so Juberek's defenses are not prepared. Marquis Juberek orders that a messenger be sent to Duke Kettlesek immediately, since they need to request reinforcements. Meanwhile, Pace happily counts the profits from the candies and the engagement portraits he sold, totaling 384 coins. Seeing all that, Shih Tzu comments that it is too much money for a child his age, but Pace clarifies that it is his fair reward for making the sweets. He will use the money to ask traveling merchants to bring them 100 goats and will try to negotiate to include about 3 donkeys. Shih Tzu warns him that he will make the merchants cry, but Pace explains that goat milk and cheese are perfect ingredients for making sweets. Goats eat anything and are easy to raise. And now that they have more vegetation, they will take advantage of it to increase their livestock and begin creating their land of sweets. Shih Tzu responds that the problem will be the lack of workers, but Pace says he will think about that later. Then he makes him taste the molasses he prepared, explaining that it is extracted from a plant called sweet zorgo. When tasting it, Shih Tzu is surprised by how sweet it is, and Pace informs him that it is his prototype for sugar. Once he perfects it, he will be able to produce sugar and create a system for producing sweets in Mortal. Shortly after, Pace works on another of his projects together with Lumi and Mark, although this time he avoids using magic. Licorice approaches to see what they are doing, and he explains that they are building a blender. When they finish, they decide to test it for the first time by placing sweet Zorgo stems into the barrel to extract their juice. However, they are too small to use it properly, and in the end they break it. The mechanism is correct, but it does not have enough strength, so he thinks it should be made entirely of metal. Licorice comments that she has seen in Juburek that they use a device similar to that blender to make wine, where two people turn a handle. Pace thanks her for the information and decides that they should obtain that device so they can make fewer mistakes. Without wasting time, he runs home very excited, wanting to get everything he needs and wondering what kind of sweets he will prepare. His smile disappears when he finds his father and Shih Tzu clearly worried with serious news. Casserole informs him that the war has begun, and everything started between the lands of Juburek in the east and their neighbors from Lutor Road. In another scene, we see the camp of Lutor Road, where they report that there is no confirmation that the Duke has sent reinforcements from the capital. Lutorad, who is leading everything, says that it is just as he thought, since when they spread the false information that they had 30,000 men, Juburek surely requested reinforcements from Cattlesec immediately. If he has not acted yet, it means that the Duke refused to send them or Juburek withdrew his request. For Lutorad, it is the second option, since upon learning that they only have 10,000, he would have estimated that his army would be enough, and thus maintain his honor. That probably did not please the Duke, so it can be assumed that it caused a dispute. At that moment, someone arrives to report that the fiancé of Juburek's daughter is currently stationed in their lands, which gives Lutor Road a great idea. Back in Mortal, Licorice worries about Pace, mentioning that he seems lost in thought. He tries to reassure her, saying it is nothing, but she knows that he is thinking about the war. She learned that a war will soon begin between her home and its neighbors, so she is also worried. She does not understand why they waste their time in another foolish war, because if they spent more time making sweets like him, she is sure they would be happier. Pace smiles and agrees with her, saying that sweets make everyone happy, so that is the correct answer. Licorice becomes more cheerful, so he tells her that the merchant will bring goats today. With them, they will be able to make cheesecake using goat milk, which is rich and delicious. Despite his excitement, he becomes alarmed when he learns that the goats have been stolen. The merchant explains that before reaching Mortal, another noble bought them and forced them to hand them over. So it is essentially theft. Pace does not want to stay idle, so he asks for the name of that noble. The merchant informs him that it was Baron Lunchbach, who is known for harassing new nobles. Shih Tzu comments that in cases like this, if they had a powerful noble relative, they could at least file a complaint, but they cannot do anything. The marriage with the Juburek family has not been officially completed yet, so it would be difficult to ask the Marquis to intervene. In the first place, this incident is a result of the conflict between Juburek and Lutor Road, so he would not be pleased to deal with their problems. They have no choice but to accept it, although they did not expect the war to affect them so quickly, since it only started 3 days ago. Even so, Pace loses his temper and throws a tantrum, saying that he himself will go talk to that noble. Casserole tries to calm him down by reminding him that they are in a time of war, so it is natural that each fief wants to secure its own resources, especially food. In addition, Baron Lunchbach is closer to the front line, so it is obvious that he is desperate to secure supplies. It is true that they lost the chance to buy goats, but no one else was harmed. Shih Tzu adds that even if he goes after the goats, it is clear that Lunchbach will use the war as an excuse to refuse. Therefore, even if he is frustrated, he must accept reality, and when the war ends they will have a chance to negotiate. Pace is not happy with the situation, especially since Licorice sounded very excited to try cheesecake. He does not understand why people fight over things, since that never makes anyone happy. Shih Tzu speaks again with a new idea, saying that there is a way to receive supplies with priority during the war. Pace immediately understands what he means, and that is that if they join the war front as reinforcements, they will be able to demand priority in receiving resources. In addition, since he is engaged to Licorice, he has more than enough reason to support Juburek. The decision is made immediately, so in a short time, 12 people from the village, including Pace, head to the war. All of this is to recover the goats. Meanwhile, in the Juburek house, they report that the army of Lutor Road has begun to advance. Upon hearing that they only have 10,000, Marquis Juburek concludes that his army will be more than enough. Even so, he asks Squale to defend the front line, since he has a plan. Petra becomes very worried, but Squale decides to show strength, accepting his first battle and promising to protect the land at all costs. In the enemy camp, Lutor Road reveals that his objective this time is to separate Juberek from Cattlesec. He explains that the heir of the Cattlesec family who is staying with Juberek has no battle experience. He will surely want to give him a chance to have his first battle, but they cannot risk the grandson of such an important authority. However, if it is a battle they can win easily, it would be the perfect opportunity. And if they also manage to win, Cattlesec would be very grateful. That is why they will lure him to a place where they can kill him easily. In this way, Juberek would not only lose his daughter's fiancé, but Cattlesec would also become furious and cut ties with him. That way, Juberek would be left alone and lose all the reinforcements he was counting on, allowing them to launch a full attack and defeat him before the Duke's reinforcements arrive. When Casserole and Pace meet with Marquis Juberek, he shows them the current enemy formation on the map. Casserole immediately feels that something is wrong, although the enemy information seems very solid. Pace comments that it may be too solid, to the point that it seems unnatural, since it is designed to repel their attacks when they are supposed to be the ones invading. Casserole analyzes the enemy and manages to predict where they will attack first, since the terrain is ideal for an ambush. Marquis Juberek becomes very alarmed when he sees the location indicated on the map, because the troops led by Squale are there right now. He thought it would be an easy area to defend and sent him there so he could have his first battle. Casserole warns him that since Squale has no experience, he will be the perfect target for an ambush, so they must go help him immediately. Juberek leaves a squad under his command, so Casserole and Pace immediately set out to save Squale. On the other hand, we see that Squale falls directly into the enemy's trap, so he tries to remain calm while watching his soldiers fall one by one. When he finally reacts, he leads his troops into the forest, but they are ambushed there as well, and within seconds they are surrounded. Despite being at a clear disadvantage, he orders his men to push forward, refusing to surrender. At that moment, several enemy soldiers begin to fall, and we see that Glacé has arrived just in time to support them. Casserole cuts his way through with his sword, and Pace also arrives to help at the moment he is most needed. Thanks to them, they manage to clear the area in a short time, and Squale thanks them deeply for saving them from such danger. On the other hand, seeing that the Mortel forces are on Juberek's side, Lutor Road has no choice but to withdraw his troops, clearly furious. Juberek is relieved when he sees that Squale is safe, apologizing for sending him into such a situation. Casserole tells him that Squale was very brave, since even when he was surrounded by the enemy, he never gave up and was willing to fight his way through. Despite all the praise, Squale does not accept it, saying that he does not deserve any reward. Even when Petra comes to greet him, he cannot show happiness and is on the verge of tears, so he decides to be alone. Juberek becomes worried seeing him like that. Casserole explains that those who suffer a lot in their first battle sometimes fall into trauma. Petra does not know what to do to comfort him, since she has never seen him like that. Casserole reminds Pace that some time ago he managed to cheer up Mark after his mistake with the bandits, so he asks him to take care of the situation now, since they are almost the same age. Pace comes up with a great idea after remembering his conversation with Licorice, where they talked about how sweets make people happy. Juberek supports his idea and quickly provides all the necessary ingredients. Pace immediately begins preparing a dessert to cheer up Squale and bring back his smile. While he works hard in the kitchen, Squale continues to feel terrible despite everything others say to encourage him. He cannot stop thinking about his fallen soldiers and the fact that because of his lack of experience, they lost their lives. Finally, Pace arrives at the gathering, congratulating Squale on his victory and presenting the dessert he prepared. Immediately, a sweet and delicious aroma fills the room, attracting everyone's attention. Pace cuts the first slice and gives it to Squale, explaining that the dessert is called tarte tatin, a baked sweet made with bankas that he prepared for him. Squale is amazed by the taste, saying that he has never tasted a dessert so delicious. He tells him that its name comes from the Tatin sisters, who were great pastry chefs. The tart is made by placing the fruit on the dough and baking it. But one day, the sisters forgot to place the dough in the mold and only baked the fruit. With no other choice, they placed the dough on top and baked it again, and the result was the tarte tatin. In other words, this tart was born from a mistake made by its creators. Hearing about the mistake, Squale is immediately affected, remembering his desperate moments on the battlefield. Pace continues speaking, saying that he believes it was a beautiful miracle. After all, if the sisters had thrown away the fruit when they realized the mistake and made another one the correct way, tarte tatin would not exist. It would have been normal to discard it, but since they did not allow their mistake to remain a mistake forever, now everyone can enjoy that dessert. Those words reach Squale, and Pace tells him that recently he also made a mistake while baking sweets, and remembered that tart. Mistakes are never useless, and what matters is to stay optimistic and always try to improve, even if mistakes are made. Squale continues to feel pressure from his grandfather, who never allowed mistakes. However, Petra clarifies that he did not make any mistake, since she asked him to return safely, and he kept his promise. Squale mentions that the only reason he is safe is because of the sacrifice of his men, and he cannot help but feel bad about it. Pace responds that this is how a leader should be. Instead of celebrating his first victory, he thinks about the soldiers who lost their lives. Petra tells him that she is proud of him for not losing his humility, saying that nothing could make her happier than the fact that he returned safe and sound. Clearly moved, Squale thanks Petra and finally smiles again. He also thanks Pace, promising to become stronger as a person. Now that Squale has regained his spirit, Jubarek greatly thanks Pace, who does not miss the opportunity and asks him for several things he needs. In a short time, Casserole handles the negotiations regarding the matter with Baron Lunchbach, managing to recover all the goats that were taken from them. On the other hand, thanks to Jubarek, Pace obtains the device used to make wine, which will be perfect for his plans. Time passes, and Licorice finally tastes the cheesecake that Pace mentioned, made with goat milk. She has already been living in Mortel for a month, and the sweets that Pace prepares seem magical. Everyone treats her very well, and every day is very fun, so she could not be happier being with Pace, always looking forward to the desserts he makes.